This week in the security news, vicious trap, the malware hiding in your router, hacking your car. WSL is open source, but why? Using AI to find vulnerabilities, a case study. Why you should not build your own password manager. The inside scoop behind Lumma Infostealer. Hacking a smart grill. Hard-coded credentials on end-of-life routers. And the story behind Alphanetworks. SIM swapping is still happening. LoRa for C2. It's swapping. The fappening is swapping.
Swoofing.
What is happening?
It got swapping.
LoRa for C2. Russian drones use Telegram. Flipper Zero mod for the LOLZ. Signal blocks recall. And CISA loses more people. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. Coming to you from the Hacker Syndicate Studios, this is Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 876, being recorded on Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. I am your host, Paul Asadorian, joined here in studio with Mr. Larry Pesce.
With the SIM swapping.
The SIM swapping, right? You like that? Something like that. I was get a little ahead of myself there. But
Yeah, I mean,
I think we should leave it. It's good. We're leaving that take. It's a good take.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
yeah, you guys.
It was good. It was good.
See, the take and the blooper reel all on the same one.
All in the same thing.
But,
That's right.
But I will say it's good to be back in the studio. It's been a couple weeks, and it's been a crazy couple of weeks.
Bill Swearingen is back as well.
Speaking of being back, I'm back. Thanks for having me, Paul. I just want to point out that I did not pick on you during the SIM swapping part, so I should get a trophy or something.
You should.
I hear you already have a belt.
I do.
That's
Yeah.
right. You do.
Yeah.
The bell is pretty awesome. Mandy Logan is here with us. Mandy,
It was
welcome.
swapping. I think that
Mr. Jeff Mann, what's flapping with you?
I'm good. I'm living in the past, but I'm good.
Mr. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Oh, you guys are getting kind of silly.
We're just getting started, Sam. It's just buckle up, baby. Buckle up. Before we get started, though, I got a couple quick announcements. Identiverse is returning to Las Vegas June 3rd through the 6th. This is the last time I will say this on the show because it's happening like next week. Hear from 250 plus expert speakers and connect with 3,000 plus identity security professionals across 4 days of keynotes, breakout sessions, and deep dives into the latest identity security trends. Take part in hands-on workshops and explore the brand new non-human identity pavilion. Register now and save 25% with the code IDV25-securityweekly at securityweekly.com/IDV2025. Just when I got like awesome at saying that, there'll be a new announcement. Speaking of new announcements, did you guys know that cyber threats are moving fast? Are your credentials already out there?
Yep.
Join Channel E2E and Flare for Tales from the Dark Web, a live webcast revealing how Infostealer malware and account takeovers happen and how to stop them. See real-time demos, learn proactive defense strategies, and discover how Flare's identity intelligence can keep your data safe. June 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Register at securityweekly.com/dark web. I think we should keep that link around and just make it redirect to the dark web or something.
Yeah.
Ooh, fun.
On to
But the dark web, the only dark web.
Right.
the dark web.
Link
Yep.
to the dark
Not
web.
to be confused with the deep web.
Yeah, it's deep web.
What
dark
about
web.
what about the deep dark web?
The deep dark web?
Scary
I think
place.
It's all a deep dark
Scary
web.
place.
That's where Bill hangs
The
out.
internet
right.
is a cesspool, pretty much. It's continued that trend.
That's why I love it.
Yep. And part of that cesspool is, attackers taking over routers and turning them into their own, to do their evil bidding, which is something I had admittedly not considered, that attackers would use it as a honeypot. So when I read this article from my story number 5, it comes from a company called Sequoia, which is not the capital investment firm, but this is the research firm Sequoia. They investigated this and found that essentially they were taking over routers and proxying or intercepting network traffic to steal any new exploits that might come at these mostly IoT network appliance devices.
Interesting.
And I had not considered that as a thing that attackers would do. I mean, it makes sense. Kind of interesting. I also want us as the good people to do that as well, to see any new exploits or malware coming out. And there are people with vast sensor networks. I really want to build my own. But they targeted more than 50 brands of Soho routers, SSL VPNs. I can't talk tonight. Let's see what else, other words I can screw up tonight. DVRs and BMC controllers. Now, I do suspect, I agree with, I believe it was Juan on the Three Buddy Problem podcast who said, this is probably a multi-purpose. Like the honeypot thing was one thing, but if you've got 5,000, I think it was 5,500 edge devices in a botnet, why would you just, his point was, why would you use it for one thing?
Yeah.
Like they're totally using it as an orb network, operational relay boxes.
Yep.
To do that, most likely is the, speculation there. But the thing that struck me is that attackers were going after BMC devices or baseboard management controllers. Specifically, the report states that super micro BMC devices were targeted. Like, wow, I know about vulnerabilities in super micro BMCs. I may or may not have taken some of those firmware images and run it through Emba. Found some pretty heinous vulnerabilities.
Yep.
Also, if you follow the link I have in the show notes, there is, so this is interestingly enough, Paul spent way too much time on this very particular topic. So
yeah,
there are newer vulnerabilities, I believe they're all 2025, 2024, 2025 CVEs that you can find easily because Supermicro became a CNA.
Oh, yep.
And so you can filter and sort on them. And I found those really easily. But I was like, what happened to all of them before Supermicro was a CNA? So then you got to do a regular search. And if you follow my link in the show notes, it takes you to all the previous CVEs sorted by CVSS score. And there's probably 6 or 7 of a CVSS 10.0, including things like authentication bypass, coupled with favorite.
That's called privilege escalation. No.
That's right, privilege escalation according to Intel. Right. Supermicro calls it appropriately authentication bypass, coupled with remote command execution. And I don't know if the attackers were using those vulnerabilities or if they were just password spraying or default passwords or some combination of that. I think it's interesting. Did they really know what they had? So they had the highest level privileges on a given number. It doesn't say how many of those were Supermicro BMCs out of the 5,500.
Right.
But some number of those were Supermicro BMCs. And here you are, malicious threat actors. You've now got the highest level privileges on a system. You could wreak havoc in many different ways, including potentially causing physical damage.
Yep. But arguably, wreaking havoc is not what they want to do, because then they lose that endpoint as part of their orb or as part of their honeypot.
Right. They want to keep it running.
Yep. The one thing I find is kind of fascinating, that seeing sort of this evolution, is that taking this device now, making it multi-purpose, probably initially as an orb, but I would very highly suspect that they continue to be good for these orbs, and maybe they start to get blocked. So now they get used for honeypots. I mean, the orbs are still there, and they can't get taken offline because so many of these devices are older. I would venture to guess many of them are older. They've been end of life. There's no firmware updates for them. There's no automatic updates, and arguably there's no way for you to the manufacturer to contact the customer to tell them that there are patches available, or to even update their routers. Because they may have never been registered. The manufacturers for this stuff is now left working with the providers, the internet service providers, who may not be very willing. Mm-hmm. So it really, as ISPs, you probably need to start looking at some of this stuff. And maybe they have been taking that orb part offline, and now we've got 5,500 routers or 5,500 devices that we can't use for orb activity anymore. Now what do we do with them?
And some people are blocking them
Yep.
because their IP addresses are listed in IOCs somewhere. But that's not the internet at large
Right.
isn't blocking them. So
Yep.
traffic is still going through them. So they're banking on the fact. It's a great point, Larry. Banking on the fact someone might throw an exploit at it that you didn't know about before. I was like,
Yep.
oh, that's really
Yep.
interesting.
Oh, hey, it's this D-Link device, and let's go throw an exploit at it. And ooh, thanks.
But how do they prevent someone else from putting malware on it? Or they don't care if someone does?
They don't care.
Maybe they don't care.
Yep.
I mean, that's my whole thing. When you set up a honeypot, for Defender's honeypot, you want to contain the infection so it doesn't spread.
Yep.
And so, there's that.
I did see something in there that there was some comments about modifying IP tables rules. So maybe they're doing traditional honeypot type of stuff about modifying targeted redirection of inbound network traffic via IP tables.
Yeah. So they're
Post exploitation.
They're routing the incoming somewhere else and then routing it back, essentially creating a loop.
Yep.
So I get a copy of all the traffic.
Yep.
So this kind of
It's on
feels
them.
like a researcher project to me. So I understand that this is, that they're using equipment that does not belong to them, but it certainly has a feel of gray hat here. And I'm wondering,
I would do that. I would love to do that.
So that's actually what I was just going to ask. That's what I was just going to ask. This kind of feels like something you would do, Paul. I wonder, when you look at all of the facts, he threw it right out. He wanted to talk about the story right away. He was like, "We got to talk
that was
about
all Johnny on the spot."
Have you ever seen the hackers in this story and Paul in the same room at the same time?
We haven't.
Nope.
That's a good point, Larry. That's a good point.
Good point. That's a great point.
But I mean, look at this. There's BMC, firmware, vulns, honeypots. This is right up Paul's alley. I think he might be vicious trap.
Yep.
And
he can neither confirm nor deny, Bill.
I think some of their data is pretty interesting too. It says a little bit about towards the end. It's worth noting that Macau is the most infected country.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, huh?
Because many internet subscribers in that country are using an old D-Link DIR 850 L Soho router.
Oh.
Right.
Did you
that was in my
specifically
talk.
target that country, Paul, or was it just
that was it? Well, that you could trace it back to my BrewCon 2010 talk, where I talk about targeting specific countries to find routers that have similar vulnerabilities.
Just saying the facts.
Smoking gun,
Yep.
smoking gun, dude.
Yeah. Facts.
I try and blame it on others, be like, "Oh, they watch my talk." That other persona that I keep.
Uh-huh.
Is it? They listed. What do they list?
I mean, it says right here in the show notes, right at the bottom. It says, it's me. It's Paul. That's what it says.
Mm-hmm.
It says it right there.
It
in
says
the
right
show
there.
notes.
It's Paul. Yep. And the ironic thing is, no one cares.
Right.
Yeah, whatever. Compromise. I think that's one reason why they're targeting these devices, because whatever, no one cares.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes they do take them down. The list of devices is super interesting. Many of them, I was supporting at my day job: Avanti Connect Secure, Fortinet, Citrix NetScaler, Cisco ASA. We don't support the Cisco Small Business, but attackers love them. That's the RV series, Cisco routers, RV042. That's a Cisco Small Business edition. What else is on there? Supermicro, we talked about. TP-Link, Unify, Ubiquity Gear is on there. Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN. A lot of DVR and cameras too. So it's a mixture. It's interesting. It's a mixture of IoT stuff and some enterprise stuff all together, which I thought was kind of interesting. I mean, and why not?
It looks like a lot of enterprise cameras. Honeywell, Axis, Dahua, Panasonic, Samsung.
Yeah, those are. You're saying those are more enterprise.
Yeah. Yep.
Network storage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ruckus
Ran the gamut. Yeah, Ruckus. I thought, did Cisco buy Ruckus? Is Cisco?
Yeah.
No, Cisco's Meraki.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very interesting mixture of technology they went after, for sure.
Yep, and I bet most of them are probably end of life.
Yeah. Well, that we should hit on my other story. Talk about end of life D-Link exploit. Did you look at the code for this one?
I did not.
Oh my god, dude! It's like the most obvious backdoor on the planet.
Which story is this, Paul?
So now we're jumping to my story number 19, hard-coded credentials in the Telnet service of D-Link DIR 605 and 816 model routers, which are both end of life. When you extract the firmware, this is like, why didn't I look at this? You extract the firmware with binwalk, and then you start looking at the configuration files, like the telnetd.sh shell script, and you look at the code and stuff. And you know what? I can put that on the screen.
Yeah.
And you look at the code that's in there. It's basically like, well, if user bin login exists, then launch telnetd with that as the default user bin login as the login service is what -l must say. The username is Alphanetworks, the password is a variable called image sign, which if you look up in the code, the image sign variable is just the contents of /etc alpha_config /image_sign,
Interesting.
which is just a plain text file. And then the interface and the timeout. And so it runs that as the telnet service. And then if you look inside the etc alpha config image sign file, there's a password there. And that's your telnet login.
Wow.
Which is pretty, I mean, that's, again, the most obvious backdoor ever. But I was like, why?
It's more like a front door.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, you should just replace this router because it's end of life. However, if I were to take apart this firmware with something like binwalk, you can go in and then modify some of those files and change the password or do some other modification to make that backdoor not work, then repackage the firmware and upload it to the router. Now, I'm not saying to try that because that's dicey. You could definitely break your router doing that, but it is possible. More likely, you're just going to throw this router away and get a new one. However, I asked Perplexity Research to tell me where Alphanetworks comes from in the context of this disclosure.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Its answer was amazing. So it's the Alphanetworks reference in CVE 2025 46176 represents the continuation of a long-standing pattern rooted in the corporate relationship between D-Link and its spun-off R&D manufacturing arm, Alphanetworks Incorporated. The vulnerability demonstrates how firmware development practices established over 2 decades ago continue to create security risk in contemporary networking devices. The persistent appearance of hard-coded Alphanetworks user accounts across multiple vulnerability disclosures from 2013 to 2025 indicates systemic issues in firmware development and security practices that have not been adequately addressed despite repeated public exposure. Wow, it's so well written. Like it's awesome.
Wait, was that from
essentially
Perplexity?
That is from Perplexity.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had the full chat, which goes into even more detail, but essentially Alphanetworks was a separate company.
Yep. And Alphanetworks was their research R&D manufacturing arm, which probably developed a whole host of their firmware.
Mm-hmm.
And they've just been reusing code from
For
those
sure.
for 2013 to 2025, 12 years. And despite having some of those strings in firmware
because I need to log in, I need to test stuff. And
but the worst part is that they have exposures. They have vulnerabilities that are disclosed using that string Alphanetworks, according to what Perplexity has said years ago. And they haven't gone through and searched through their code base looking for that string.
Right. To stop that from happening. Like it said the first disclosure that talks about, and I don't know if it was hallucinating or not, just throwing that out there, but it says the persistent appearance of hard-coded Alphanetworks user accounts across multiple vulnerability disclosures from 2013
to 2025. Yep.
So they knew about it in 2013 and didn't go, oh, maybe we shouldn't hard-code credentials with a username Alphanetworks in a firmware anymore. They said, no, we're going to keep doing it. It's totally fine. What's the worst that could happen? We could end of life all these routers.
It costs money to go look through your code base and fix that, Paul. I mean,
Correct.
they're just keep printing. Just keep printing.
Keep printing. Yeah, you keep printing routers, PCBs, and money.
Just keep
right?
swimming. Just keep.
Going
So
along. The
is anybody
margin's
else
low.
just bothered simply by the fact that Telnet is still out there?
Yes, that literally was what I was thinking when he said this. Like, I'm shocked.
Well, if you're going to build a back door, why not be telling me?
Right. Yeah,
You know,
might as well. I mean,
Now, I assume that more modern, even low-end routing, networking devices don't use Telnet. I assume they use Secure Shell.
And is there some way to turn Telnet off? That would seem like a useful mitigation.
In some, so the answer is it depends. So in some routers, yes, you can turn Telnet off. In some, it's varying levels of difficulty. Some support SSH, some do not. Their support for SSH is interesting. There are some switches that I had that I still have here in the studio. I don't think they're plugged in, where I had to change the hashing algorithm in the cryptographic protocols that were used to basically pin them to a certain one because it wouldn't get to that one by default. So I had to tell it. So my SSH config, like I could pull it up. I had to like basically tell it what to use because it was old and antiquated. And so by default, your SSH client won't use it, but you can tell it to use it, which is kind of interesting. So like the support for, and some just don't even support logging in on the command line, or it varies. You can log in the command line, get basic functionality, but you can't really get a Linux shell unless you break out of it. So it's all over the map.
So is Telnet there more for out-of-band vendor support opportunities?
I think it's more of a backdoor for developers in the development process.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sound like, or support, right?
Well,
Maybe
that's
they
what I
said
meant-
only you
that's
can
what I
only
meant
log
by
in from
vendor
the
access.
you can only log in from the LAN, but that would still be a vulnerability. Like even if you could only log in from the LAN side, and Telnet was listening, it would with a hard-coded credentials that would still allow attackers to potentially access it once they get on your network.
I suppose what it means is they're still just using the same firmware that they wrote 30 years ago and making small updates like the password for model after model.
Correct.
yeah,
Correct.
I agree.
And it's a problem we've talked about because now we've got tons of these deployed and they're being used by threat actors to do nefarious things, as we established at the top of the show.
Well, if you just buy the cheapest product and that's your only concern, this is what's going to happen.
But there still should be some level of safety and assurance in these devices. But
Well,
there
do
is
we-
not today.
Yeah, do we have the cyber UL listing? We were supposed to get that from Mudge like 5 years ago. Is
Yeah,
there some
right,
way to have a certification on the device to say it doesn't have this many stupid problems?
The example
it's called Cyber Trustmark.
the example I've used
Yeah.
is, we're safe when we buy a TV and we hang it on our wall, and we're reasonably assured that it's not going to catch fire because it's gone through some level of testing. UL is a part of that to greatly reduce the risk that TV will catch fire. What we need is that same level of assurance that the manufacturer hasn't done ridiculous things. Like the bar doesn't even be that high. Like, don't run Telnet and don't put hard-coded credentials on it. Should be part of that bar. There are many legislative initiatives from the U.S. and other countries to get that bar in place, right? And that's usually one of the first things they list out is no hard-coded credentials. No
You're saying the
backdoor
same
credentials.
thing, Paul, but I would take it a step further and specifically say don't install the Telnet daemon. Don't ship that with the device.
Yeah.
Well, then we have to use generic language like there must be a cryptographically secure, management protocols are in use.
Well,
Is the way I've seen that
CISA
written.
they did publish a list of security standards for devices about 8 months ago. And in fact, if any of you know what's going on at CISA, I'd like to know because the news looks bad.
Yeah, we know the news looks bad. That's what. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw your article, Sam, about things happening at CISA. I say it's CISA.
Yeah, I say CISA too.
Yeah, we talked
well.
about it a couple months ago, and you said that you knew what was going to happen at CISA. So I wonder if you have like some inside knowledge.
I do not. Did I say I knew what was going to happen at CISA?
Yeah, I think you did. Because I said they're going to fire everybody. And he said, I know what's going to happen. We can talk about that later. And then I had to go.
Oh no, we probably talked about it right after you
Probably.
left,
I
so-
think we did.
Probably.
Yeah.
They fired people, but then they hired new people. We covered that on the show. But what happened recently?
They fired more
According to
people.
this, they fired another whole bunch of people. Most of the leaders have left or will leave as Trump fires everybody as part of aggressive government downsizing. So
Well,
I
this
wonder.
says they departed. Most of the leaders,
Yeah.
agencies, operating divisions, and regional offices have left or will leave this month amid Trump administration's aggressive government downsizing campaign. Oh, okay. So they didn't leave voluntarily. Like I want to make sure we point that out if that's what happened. Can I summarize this article?
Well, they might have taken that. There was an offer from Elon Musk at the start of all this to get if you will retire, we'll give you a financial incentive to retire.
Yes.
And a whole bunch of people did that. And I must say, I would leave too. I wouldn't see any future working in the current government. I probably better get another job. Working here is not going to work out for the next few years.
Well, yeah, and we've seen people leave.
Yeah.
I mean, Todd said this publicly. He's on another podcast, right? And for Gray Noise, and he left CISA and he works at Run Zero now with HD.
Yeah, this is a lot like a return to office mandates. What you do is you lose all the good people because they can find another job. The only people that stay are the ones that can't find another job.
Or
Steve Harris
just really
making sure-
believe in the mission. I mean, and I think CISA is gonna retain some good people, right? And mainly those people that will put their head down and because they believe in the mission. Quite honestly, I don't want to say that everybody that stayed is not good, but Sam.
Well, I think it would be hard to. I think morale is low, and not very many people believe in the current future of the mission. I certainly wouldn't.
It would be difficult for sure.
Yeah.
Ironically,
will
though,
continue. The flogging will continue until morale improves.
ironically, and I think it's CISA, the nominee to replace Jen Easterly, it's Sean something, because Sean is the name of the person that's replacing Harry Coker, as well as the person, I think it's Sean Planky is the CISA nominee. He's actually legitimately qualified for the role, which seems out
Must
of
be a mistake.
character
Must be a
for a lot of the nominations and appointments for positions.
He's not from Fox News, you're saying.
He's not from Fox News. He actually has.
Well, then they must be
legitimate
planning on
background.
closing the whole agency. That's the only reasonable explanation.
Well, it says this, so the CISA's executive director, is that the person?
Yeah.
It says the CISA's executive director insists the agency remains committed to its mission and is prepared to face evolving cyber threats.
I hope so.
That would be their mission.
Where do we want to go next?
I want to say one more thing.
Yes, you
Having
just
worked
did.
for the government, I at some level, I'm not unopposed to, working for any organization. It's not exclusive to government. Removing certain levels of mid to upper level management isn't necessarily a bad thing because many
Sure.
organizations can
Tend to be
get a little
top-heavy.
top heavy.
If it was top, I'm not sure in the org
I
chart
have
what
no
CISA
idea.
looked like if it was top heavy, but I agree with you, Jeff. Sometimes top heavy in the organization is no good.
And because at some level, the rationale, and that might be a very generous word to use for the current regime's game plan of downsizing, if they're trying to streamline and cut out, a lot of chaff, let's say, maybe there's some wisdom to it, but how do you bring in and attract people to come to work for an organization that's been gutted, that doesn't provide job security, which the government used to be, if nothing else, job security. We'll see what happens. We can move on now.
So,
Well, I think we ought to talk about using
So
AI
Mandy
to
had
find
one more thing to say.
vulnerabilities. Oh,
Sorry.
no,
Mandy.
I was just trying to think if the mission and ideas that CISA was doing, would they move them to other departments?
I doubt it.
See,
The Department of Unemployment seems to be
That's
where
where they're
people are
going.
moving from the U.S. government, unfortunately.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
All right.
That was more common in universities. Bounce around. Sam's nodding his head, right? Bounce around from department, go to different departments. Not a lot, but people
Nah.
would make moves, laterally
Oh no,
or just
I just
needed
meant I didn't
a
mean the
change.
people moving to different departments. I meant the mission. I was thinking more from the upper administration, like from the executive branch, with going through the increased budget spending for military. And I don't know, it seemed logical to me that with everything else that Doge was doing and the overall push the government has toward enhancing stability as a a powerhouse, or going for that. Like, why wouldn't the mission of CISA, as Sam says, still need to be carried through? And I was thinking organizationally, where would it strategically be moved for their decisions, their choices?
Yeah, but I don't think there is another government agency that like secures things for industry and homes.
No.
No, I don't think so either.
I think there's no place. It's not going to be the NSA or anything. I don't think there's any place else to go.
Where does CISA reports up through DOD?
No, they're Department of Homeland Security.
Homeland Security, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, CISA's 20-ish years old as an organization.
And the thing is, in the last 5 years, CISA has been doing great work. I use a lot of their papers in my consulting. I really appreciate them. They've become very helpful. I'm really sad to see them sort of shut down.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they can weather the storm, because we need them. Did you want to jump to another story, Sam?
Yeah, I want to hear about this finding a vulnerability with an AI. It looks like you went into it more than me. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So they used ChatGPT 03 to find CVE 2025-37899, but not before they, what I said, did the old-fashioned way and discovered CVE 2025-37898, which is, it was a vulnerability in the SMB subsystem in the Linux kernel, and it was a particular class of vulnerability.
There's a problem with the Linux kernel. We just spent a whole episode next week talking about that.
Shocker, it has vulnerabilities.
Wait,
in
We're going to spend a whole lot of time talking about
Stay
that.
tuned.
Wasn't this a story that Mandy brought up next
Yeah, stay tuned next week.
Get even more data next week.
Yeah.
So I thought I thought maybe someone got lucky and everyone was talking about it, but no, this person did the manual work of finding a vulnerability, then used an LLM to find the same class of vulnerability or type of vulnerability in the Linux kernel. It was wildly successful. Let's see, making LLM generally useful for research. So tested O3's own ability to find. So they first had O3 find CVE 2025-37778. Sorry, I got the number wrong before. In KSMBD, which it detected 8 out of 100 runs compared to 3 out of 100 for Claude, or 0 out of 100 for Sonnet 3.5. Then analyzed all that. That's what it was. SMB command handlers. There was approximately 12,000 lines of code, and that's what led to the new discovery, was the basically training on that 12,000 lines of code, basically reiterating what the first vulnerability that was found manually. Yeah. So pretty wild stuff.
But he did have to run it 100 times and found one successful run. So it's a pretty, it's not terribly impressive, I'd say. It's like a dog playing checkers. It's not that it does a good job, it's that it does it at all.
Well, how long did it take for each run, I wonder?
I don't know. These reasoning AIs are already pretty expensive. I've seen people say it costs like more than $1,000 on the server side to run one of these reasoning AIs. That's why I think I'm not too impressed. I mean, it's what they show is it's barely possible with heroic amounts of effort to get an AI to find something. I wonder if it's actually faster than a human finding it yet.
Well, and you wonder what kind of hardware this person was running on as well, because this was just an independent security researcher on whatever hardware was available. I don't know in the article if he states what hardware it was running on.
And to some of Sam's point about the cost, think about the AIXCC challenge that they kicked off at DEF CON last year, head at RSA this year, and are announcing the winners this year at DEF CON, because it's almost a 2-year or a full year CTF effectively, where they're having AI find vulnerabilities and so forth. And they've already had one 0-day discovered, got reported, and all this type of stuff. But the prize for this is in excess of millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So then maybe they are covering costs for some of this type of stuff.
I'm sure they aren't. I mean, all AI is just running on loss leader now. We're spending $400 billion to build a data center, and we can't even get people to pay $20 a month for it. You know, everyone is betting that AI is going to get like 10 or 100 times better than it is, which seems like a really unwise bet, because we're already hitting the hardware limitation of the equipment, and we're hitting the limit of the training data. So financially, I'm not seeing this work out. We're spending tons and tons of money on something, all believing that some killer app is going to appear soon enough to pay for all this. And there's no sign of that. Apple was going to have the killer app with the new iPhone, and Microsoft was going to have the killer app with Copilot 365, and nobody has found anything that anybody's willing to pay for. And I just read an article. There was a study in, I think, a European country where they analyzed the effect of AI on all the workers, and the prediction of the economic analysis is that in the next 10 years, AI will increase productivity by 1%.
Wow. After
They're
all that expense.
Exactly. Silicon Valley is telling us, you're going to get 10 times more work done next year. Give us all your money. And I don't think that's any more true than it was 5 years ago when they said, blockchain is going to solve everything. Give us all your money.
Well, it is that kind of industry
Blockchain
dependent.
did solve everything.
I know. This is utopia, Sam. Just deal with it.
Well, anyway, it's
I think there will be.
Yeah.
I predict we're going to solve productivity. Give us all your money.
that's right.
Well, I mean, it's a very broad terminology, and you can spin stuff. You know, people spin stuff how they want to spin it. Coming back to the vulnerability discovery.
Yeah.
However long it took on commodity hardware, I'm curious to see if you were to have a Blackwell GPU on an NVIDIA platform, how much faster that would run. And that's not millions of dollars worth of hardware. It's not cheap hardware, but certainly it's attainable by a lot of organizations to deploy that hardware and iterate much faster to get to better productivity in a reasonable budget.
As research, I think it's wonderful. We all need to play with this stuff and see what it can do. But at some point, somebody needs to make an actual product you can sell and make money on.
Dave Vitale, using OpenAI's infrastructure, created an amazing model that detects vulnerabilities. And my hope is that they make that available and unleash it on open source code. And there was talk of like how they would monetize that, or like I think the way it was framed, and because I didn't see the talk or attend the conference, but it happened at RSA. Like the way it was framed was OpenAI is doing the research to set that up, and then like other people figure out how we're going to monetize it later. But we could have models that allow us to make the world a better place and find a lot more vulnerabilities more accurately in open source code, for example.
You're defining
use
a better place as a place with more vulnerability.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
actually define it
the
that way,
bad
too.
guys will, of course, be using it to find those vulnerabilities too.
Absolutely. Now we're saying it's an arms race.
Yeah.
Which it
I'd
usually
rather
is
know.
with.
I'd rather know.
Yeah. I'd rather be doing the same thing, trying to at least competing in the arms race, not just giving it to attackers.
Overall, I don't think it's going to replace any of us anytime soon.
Well,
I agree with that. I think if Josh were here, he'd be arguing that maybe some jobs. I think some jobs may get,
for sure,
may
because
get
there's some
replaced.
people are
jobs.
already like writers. Certain people who do certain things have already lost their jobs. But back to like Sam's point, seems that coding, certain things that it's well adapted to, yeah, it's going to modify things, but things like dairy farming or, residential plumbing construction, I don't know how much AI is ever going to adjust that.
We still need to be the innovators. AI is not the innovator. What it's creating today is based on what we've already created, and it's trained on the result of our innovations, right?
Yeah,
It's not going to get any better than us. Yeah.
And it needs human supervision. Even the coding doesn't do good coding. You need an experienced coder supervising it and cleaning it up.
Hey, did you see that the first hackathon, new
depends.
vibe coding hackathon is going on, starting?
Yeah, I mean, smaller scripts is doing great. I think larger systems is where I'm very skeptical about how much it can help. I still think you need humans to even like break it down into multiple pieces, right? You've got this giant system piece of software. You need a human to go, okay, how do we, maybe it uses AI to help you, but I want to break it down into smaller pieces. Then maybe those smaller pieces, you have some AI assistance. But smaller scripts, I just did it with the Python mod GPT and Chat GPT. I was like, create me a script that downloads audio from, and it's a very simple task. Download all the audio files from an RSS feed, store the metadata in a text file with the same name, and I didn't have to change one line of code, and it just ran. And I went through multiple iterations with it. But when I got to something a little more complex, like, hey, now I want to transcribe that audio. Yeah, then it kind of fell down, and I was troubleshooting. But it still helped me a lot.
I was doing a demo at layer 1, and I ran DeepSeek 01, which was the first reasoning model, and I just asked it a simple question about, like, you're playing Russian roulette. The guy spins the chamber and fires, and then he hands you the gun. Should you spin it before you fire or not? And it reasoned and started reasoning and arguing with itself endlessly, went for like 45 minutes, and by the end it had forgotten the question. So these reasoning,
because it blew its brains out.
Well, these reasoning models are not so good yet. They're getting better. I saw people brag about the fact that it actually remembered what it was doing for like an hour. So
seems like it would be a pretty simple math problem. Why did it get?
It would be. It even got it's fun to watch. It says, I do it this way. And then it gives up. It says, let me calculate the Bayesian probability. Then it calculates it. And then it says, no, this is just going off track, and it starts again. It reminds me a lot of me solving a CTF problem I can't solve. Like, I'll try doing something stupid, and then I'll try doing something else stupid, and eventually just give up. That's basically what it did.
Sam, you could be so much more efficient if you got an AI to try to solve the CTF problems and just give up, right?
Well, last year or the year before at B-Sides SF, there was a guy that solved them with AI and wrote a blog about it, and it was very interesting because I was in that CTF, and it didn't occur to me to use AI, and there were several problems I didn't solve because I couldn't even understand them. And he said, if you had asked Perplexity to explain that to you, you would have been better off, and I think he's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's at the point now where sometimes it surprises me, and other times I'm disappointed.
Well, it's just about as useful as having like a junior assistant.
Yeah.
So it looks up, does the routine things pretty well, and sometimes it's actually helpful, and sometimes it's terribly wrong.
Yeah, I used my Perplexity contextualization space that I created that writes as me, like writes blog posts, webinar descriptions, social posts as me. And I said, write me a social post based on this blog post that has security research in it. In fact, I think it was a vicious trap one. And he came back. I changed one word. And my boss was like, really? Oh, shit. I was like, that is
and that one
awesome.
And that one word was hyperconnected, hyphenated.
No, it wasn't, because I trained it on my writing style.
It was probably
so it didn't use that ridiculous language.
That's one of those words you can totally tell. Like,
I think it was just like one grammar. It was just a grammar change. I think it was like
in this hyperconnected world.
no.
I think it was like
he
to such as or something like that.
ESP32 somehow. We know
Right,
that.
for sure.
Yeah, well, we know where you inserted it, Mandy, but let's not. This is a family show.
Well, Paul, I would say make sure you remove the prompt, because a bunch of people are leaving the prompts in their published novels, exposing the fact that, write this next chapter imitating the style of another famous novelist, and that's in the finished product.
It's in, don't do that.
That's how so many college students and high school students get caught using AI. Because
I will, but I say
as a large language model, I cannot. But
well, my story 17
That's
that
right.
talks about how we found the vulnerability. My notes were, I said I use an LM to generate these notes. So,
Well, of course.
yeah,
You might as well be recursive. It's turtles all the way down.
Speaking of ESP32s, though, my story number 16,
geez.
ESP32 S3
Sorry.
Rogue. You want to?
You have to take a drink when he says
That's it, I know.
ESP32. Right?
Yeah. I'm out.
We haven't talked about it in the past couple of shows.
That's very true. It's been refreshing.
So we're overdue. We're overdue.
Don't worry, he's got a Flipper Zero story in there too.
It
But
looks
it is
great.
an awesome.
It looks awesome.
It is, yeah. So, but the ESP32 S3 Rogue, building advanced Rogue Wi-Fi AP for security research and demonstration. This is a cool project because the C2 communications with the device that's set up to do Wi-Fi Rogue AP happen over LoRa. So you can send commands over the LoRa channel and then conduct Wi-Fi attacks on the chip. Now, this isn't anything novel or new. There's projects that do this, but I thought the author did a nice job of writing it up. Something you want to prototype. It has a GitHub with some code. So like I'm interested in combining these technologies. I know some people have in the past. We've seen examples of it, but this was a cool tutorial on how to do it.
Yep, agreed. It was a great write-up. I still struggle a lot about using a small embedded device like this for a rogue access point, because often the functionality is so limited because you're only providing Wi-Fi. You're not providing outbound internet access.
Right.
So some of your access is limited. But this one actually implemented a rogue DNS server. So if you get connected to this access point, any DNS name you get connected to, try to query for, redirects to an embedded web server that you can host your own content for. So like a captive portal or something of the like. It's arguably not very dynamic, but you can update it over, from my understanding, you could update that web page over LoRa.
Right.
And the SSID and a few other things. So there's some, I struggle again with the usefulness of something like this, but I can see where this is going, and I like
also
it.
the S3 is only 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that one stands out as that big limitation.
Right.
Yep.
Well, still wait. I mean, they are shipping the ones with the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi on them.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that said, there are still a ton of 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi networks out there, and
for an attack like a Rogue AP, it doesn't really have to be 5 gigahertz.
Yeah.
It just has a pop-in SSID that you connect to.
Yep. And I still see orgs out there that have both set up for the 2.4 and the 5 gig for the same SSID, just on different channels for backwards compatibility. So it's not unreasonable for something like that to happen. So it's still a good attack.
Oh, but the Flipper one, this thing is so cool, and this has nothing to do with security.
I'm surprised you don't have it yet, Paul.
I just saw this not that long ago. Can I get some of these? Oh, look at the picture. Oh,
so it's your story number
pretty.
18.
But you got to take it and like wave it across.
Persistence of vision. Yep.
Is that so?
That's what that's called.
Explain that to me.
So,
no, it's like that's like a prompt.
Yeah, frame rate. It's effectively frame rate on your brain that your vision retains what is there for a certain period of time, kind of deal.
Right.
So when you move it, your eyes see that there's a streak for a period of time, and it will flash appropriately to do that.
And so you have to get this Flipper add-on, and then you can program it to display an image or text, but then you have to move it back, and you have to wave it back and forth. I thought it was pretty neat. Like, just for the LOLZ, like why not, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the POV stuff has been it's come into popularity in and out for the last maybe 5, 6 years, 10 years, something like that. But I think that's would be an awesome addition for a Flipper. Just being at a club, and you turn off all the TVs, and then you shake it and like ha ha ha.
No, you turn off all the TVs. I like it.
Yeah.
And then you persistence of vision. I turned off the TVs. Wait.
Yeah, it comes with a little Flipper app. I mean, what a great platform to develop something like this on, though. I think that's great use case for the Flipper.
Yeah, super cool. How much is it?
I didn't. Files are on GitHub. I think it's something you might have to build yourself.
Hell yeah, that's even cooler.
Selling them. How it works. I didn't dig into this and see
I bet they'll show up on.
I love it down the end. Oh, scroll down a little bit. My arm hurts now. Oh, scroll up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, a little bit more. My arm hurts now. Remember, it's not about speed. It's about consistency. Take your time, experiment until practice swiping feels natural. Since college.
I know, right? Yeah. So the hardware, it looks like you can build yourself. The schematics are there.
That is sick. Nice.
Isn't that cool?
There's one of these at the Exploratorium in San Francisco that just has lasers making a line on the wall, and you have to move your eye across it to see it spell things out.
Mm.
Huh. How do you move your eye across it?
You have to look to one and then look to the other, and the saccade is rapid movement, and then it traces out in your peripheral vision the shape.
Neat. Super cool.
While we're on the hardware stuff, really quick, I hacked my smart grill, unauthenticated temperature readings. I just thought it was pretty cool because I looked into these master built grills.
Yeah, this is Matt Brown.
Yeah, this is Matt Brown's YouTube channel, and the grills are pretty cool. It's like a grill and a smoker all in one. And a lot of these grills now have, the fancy ones have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth on there, so you can get temperature readings, so you can interact with the grill. I can change the temperature.
Yep. Set timers.
The Traeger. Someone did a teardown, I think, of the Traeger. So it's not the first time we've seen someone hack into a grill or a smoker. And but this is mostly like you play a prank on someone because these aren't persistent devices. Like most people would run their grill or smoker for a given period of time and then turn it off. So yeah, you could mess with your neighbor's grill or smoker. I guess if you didn't like your neighbor, you could crank or lower the temperature,
ruin their brisket.
Ruin the brisket. But
That's
like,
easy to
don't ruin the brisket.
Well, if you don't like your neighbor,
I guess if you don't like your neighbor,
if your neighbor's not giving you any of that good brisket,
well, then yeah, spoil it for
This
everyone.
is excellent. So it's kind of a code. Like now I could say, man, I would absolutely ruin their brisket.
Yeah, that's a metaphor
Yeah,
for so many things, man. There's so many things. Gonna mess up your brisket.
I'm gonna ruin your brisket.
But I think what Matt discovered is that he could read the temperature readings, but not actually write back to them.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I didn't dig into all the details.
Yeah. And this is pretty typical for so many IoT type devices we find with Bluetooth Low Energy nowadays. That they do some authentication, but it's typically using the function known as just works.
Yeah.
For their authentication, and just works is a fixed known pin of 6 zeros.
Yeah.
So it does some pin-based authentication. It can do encryption, but it's a pin that everybody knows. So it's like, why bother type of thing? Because you know why? It's all 6 zeros. Just works.
It just works.
It just works. And that's exactly what they call it. So,
yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these smoker grill. Yeah, charcoal grill plus a smoker. So you fill up this chamber and it lights the charcoal, and then I think does it move it over underneath the grill automatically?
It's probably an auger.
Yeah, that moves the charcoal once it gets hot enough, right? It moves it over. I think it was that exact model I was looking at. But I also flagged it for later because here he is, sniffing some of the communications.
Yep.
But
receive handle value notification.
Yep.
0036. Yep.
But then towards the end, he's got some Python code that he's using to interact with it.
Yep.
So I was like, wow, the next time I do some Bluetooth, is that Bluetooth or low energy?
It's low energy.
Low energy.
Yeah.
I was like, man, now we got some code to work with. Wow.
Well, let's put it say I'm almost positive it is a low energy because that's the super easy one to interact with. And if he's captured packets and shown it in Wireshark, for the masses, it's low energy.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool.
And speaking of the low energy, you had another one. Where did it go? I think I even looked at this one. Your story number 6. Read Victron advertised data.
Yeah.
The Bluetooth advertised data from a battery monitor or a solar charger.
Yes.
Without the app. Yep. All sorts again. This is a whole bunch of advertised data that's just out there, no authentication required, or if it's you're connecting and reading data, it's just works. Some of my favorite is down at the bottom showing output from one of my favorite tools, the Nordic NRF Connect app.
Is that this one?
Yep. Just go and connect and start exploring the devices. It tries to connect using just works and goes and
it just works is what you're saying is the all zeros for the pin.
Yep. All zeros for the pin. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yep.
I was hoping for something more from that story, but it was very specific to certain hardware.
That one I did think was actually kind of fascinating because I think the Victron stuff actually did a really good job. They did. So not only did they potentially just use JustWorks functionality as part of the advertisements. They actually encrypted the data. They used what was it? They used a SSL mode. Where was it here? They used a AES CTR block cipher, which requires an encryption key, an initialization vector, and the data, which all three of them needs to be 16 bytes in length and padded with zeros if they're not. And Wolf SSL does use has the ability to do AES CTR decryption. So all you really needed to do was to have the encryption key, which is different per module for the battery monitor and solar controllers and so forth. But the part that was kind of crazy, like they're doing that great job. They're encrypting that data over the air. You can't decrypt it unless you have the key. But if you connect to your device, one that you own with their app, you can recover the key from the app itself. So they are storing it and exposing that via the app. And it's a 16-bit key. 16-byte key. So that would take you a fairly long time to reverse. I love that they noted, oh yeah, you can copy the key right out of the app, but there's a bug in the app where it truncates the last byte. It doesn't actually copy it.
Is that a bug or a feature? Exactly. If I were the developer, I would have definitely called that a feature.
It's probably a checksum. It's probably
Jeff,
generated. Yes.
I want to go to you in This Week in Breaches. What was most interesting in This Week in Breaches?
To me, the most interesting one was my story number one, that the guy that wrote this article discovered a database that had 184 million records. And, once he started poking around, it eventually disappeared. But somebody's got it.
Oh yeah. Lots of people got it, I'm sure.
And lots of people got it.
Yep. I bet I know a guy named Tyler Robinson that probably has 3 copies.
Probably.
But he still can't find his thumb drive with Bitcoin wallet on it. Sorry, it's been a while since we made that joke.
Well, first, I think it's a great point that when you see something on the internet that maybe you don't have time to deal with it now, make a copy of it. And my coworker, Mickey's usually good about reminding me of this. If I point research out that's in a GitHub that maybe contains keys or I saw one, I don't know if I added it to the show notes, but someone had a GitHub of how to decrypt F5 passwords. And Mickey has just trained me to be like, dude, when you see that, clone it.
Yep.
Immediately.
Fork it and clone it.
Yep. Clone it immediately because it could get taken down. And we've covered stories actually very recently about what was the one we covered? It was the bypassing Windows Defender guy.
Yes.
That used an actual AV product to impersonate the AV to turn Windows Defender off.
Yep.
And that got taken down. To make his train me like, dude, whenever you see something like that, clone it, copy it immediately because it'll probably go away.
Yep.
And so that goes for a database of 184 million records.
Huh.
You can only take it. Sometimes getting the stuff off the internet is a challenge in and of itself. The challenge is not once you have the database, it's easy to read everyone's account, right? The challenge is actually getting it. We've been in situations before where it's on a Tor network, and so we have to write custom scripts to pull it off a Tor or something like that. And it can take days sometimes to pull down all that data, and then it goes away. And thankfully, you've saved a copy of it. So this one just doesn't exist anymore?
No. Well,
Gotta find someone with a copy.
Not publicly. Just find somebody with a copy of it. Adidas reported a breach.
I saw that because I think I've ordered from their site before.
It was apparently they knocked over a database that keeps records of their support calls, so that they claim there was no financial information stolen, no credit card information. Darn. So to me, it's like, well, why are you reporting on it? it's still contact information, I guess, privacy information.
Are they required to report a breach? That's a thing now, right?
I mean, you're required to report a breach of credit card information, but there wasn't any here, so
but still a breach nonetheless.
It's still a breach. Well, my story number 3 was sort of interesting because I was having a conversation recently with, I forget who. I was interviewed for a podcast and we were talking about insider threat. And I'm like, well, can we define that? Because what I hear most people talking about is insider threat. To me, is an insider threat, like clicking on a link, falling into a phishing attack. To me, that's not an insider threat. This particular one was actually an insider threat because it was actually 2 guys who are actually twin brothers that already had kind of a record, and they perpetrated an insider attack and stole stuff from I forget what the company is, but it was a federal data breach. It was going to the article.
Opexis?
Well,
major software provider for
Opexis,
the
which is
Opexis,
interesting because they're a company that's backed by Thoma Bravo. I usually go to the Thoma Bravo reception at RSA, although I didn't go this year. I was too busy. My other one that I thought was interesting.
So the
4.
twin brothers were employees.
They were They were actually employees that were
had prior convictions for hacking and wire fraud.
Yes, and they kept doing what they do.
Improperly accessed, deleted, and compromised sensitive government databases, including those from the IRS and GSA.
It sounds like they were trying to wipe out records of people to, relieve them of tax debt or something. So almost like it was a Robin Hood type of thing.
Right.
So props to them, I guess, being a layperson.
So if they'd actually been government employees, they would have had background checks, right? But they were contractors.
Mm-hmm.
Still required to have a background check, are they?
Yeah, I don't know how. That's a great point. I was wondering that myself.
I don't know how it is lately, but very often the contracting provider has to vouch and say that their people have gone through background investigation, which is slightly different from going through a background investigation.
Yeah, which usually means that they do, because if they're vouching for you, they want to have some assurance. I know some of the government contract-ish work that I had done in the past that we needed to do that. And
I mean, most organizations do it.
Yeah, and in some cases, it's now even getting a little bit more difficult, especially with the type of investigations required, especially where marijuana is legal in many states, that many can't pass a federal background or drug test because that it's legal in so many states.
Well, like marijuana or a DUI, that's like one thing, but this specifically says they were convicted of hacking and wire fraud crime. That's different from like, I got high a couple times.
Of course, in the early days, we would hire people like that, and they would become our security officers.
Mm-hmm.
The only other story I wanted to bring up was my story number 4, because it's talking about an AI service provider getting a class action lawsuit filed against it. It's interesting to me because it's a third party, and there's such a movement, belief, mindset for so many organizations in the private sector to take care of security by risk transfer, is what some bodies call it. But basically outsourcing to third parties. Oh, I don't have to deal with it. The third party will deal with it for me. I see it in the PCI world all the time, and I always wonder, but who's checking the third parties? In theory, they go through PCI assessments, but mileage varies greatly. So my question is, how do we, we talk about supply chain attacks all the time, third-party attacks, third-party risk management. We talk about it, but what do we really do about it? And what governing body is out there, if that's what it takes, which I believe it does take, that is looking at the third parties to make sure that they're up to snuff and secure and not going to put you at risk, because they're certainly not telling you that when they're trying to sell their services to the organization. That's like, oh, if you just take on all of my stuff, all my security or compliance worries go away. Okay.
It's interesting to I think about when they say third-party risk as a category, if you will, versus supply chain security as a category. What are the real differences between the two? It kind of blurs a little bit, no?
I think it blurs a lot because it's,
yeah.
I mean, in the early days of this thing that we used to call internet security, we would talk about you're only secure as the weakest link in your chain. And now more than ever, many organizations are relying very greatly on a lot of other links that they have no control over. They have no view into. PCI has a section that talks about third-party relationships and managing third-party relationships and having a program in place to make sure that the third parties you're engaging or you're considering engaging are secure and protecting and committed to protecting the data that PCI cares about. But I don't see a lot of organizations really embracing that and taking it seriously and doing what they could and should be doing.
What can you do about open source projects, like open source libraries for Python and NPM? That seems to be really dangerous, and yet what's the reasonable alternative?
Sorry, I have a bottle of E.H. Taylor that I brought to the studio. And
Paul's distracted.
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I'm also Bill, you're kind of quiet for me. I'm really nervous. We're in the second hour of the show, and
Bill, what's your take on third parties and supply chain?
If third parties doesn't get you riled, what's got you riled up lately?
He hasn't had one of those little booze balls.
Right. Those are all gone. Unfortunately, those are all done. So honestly, I think, Jeff, where you were going, when we start looking at supply chain and third party risk, one of the things you just need to do as somebody who is that risk manager is understand what data that third party has access to. Is it read only? Are they put it through that? Like what capabilities do they have on that data? Right. And then, start making a decision around on how risky is it if we give it to this type of data to a company that does this, and how does that, if the integrity of that data were to change, how would that impact our processes? Or if that data were to be lost, right? Those kind of things.
Bill just broke down though in the sneakers quote. It's all about the information.
Well, it truly is. I mean,
you're referring to the best hacker movie. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't referring to hackers. I was referring to sneakers.
Right. Hackers is the best for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I think that those lines are completely blurred. Right.
It's all about the information, or maybe the pool has a leak. I mean, what's the more lasting statement?
What gets you more fired up, Bill? Hacker conference hope says U.S. immigration crackdown causes massive crash in ticket sales, or Signal is blocking Windows recall?
Yeah, I think both of those are great. Let's talk about hope. Who's been
Let's
to
talk
hope?
about hope.
I've never been
to hope either.
I spoke at Hope last year. Fulfilled my bucket list item.
I go to Hope a lot. In fact, I went there once and it was really boring, so I was going to quit. But I said, it's a community event. So what I have to do is propose some stuff, and then when they reject me, then I can rage quit. And they approved my stuff.
Oh,
and after I showed up and gave my stuff, it was a lot more fun.
If you think it sucks, then be a part of it. I love our community, but there's so many examples in our community where that's happened over time, where we've stood up and we're like, man, this really sucks. And then we rally and
we make it better.
People are receptive to change and thoughts and new thoughts and ideas. And they're like, well, what can we do to make it better? You want to come help and make it better? Yes. And you do. And that's a positive thing. I like it.
So
Is it every year now? They were every 2 years. Are they every year?
They moved to
every year.
And I sent a bunch of proposals to them, including, I'm pretty sure, the COBOL CTF, but they didn't approve them yet because the deadline is still coming up like next week. Okay. So they're still taking proposals, but they have announced.
they used to be at a really dank hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Pennsylvania.
They finally tore that thing
Pennsylvania.
down.
And that's
Okay.
been a point of contention for some of the hardcore, long time hope attenders.
You can go have it at an empty lot, right?
Well, now it's at a college, which is what I like best, of course.
It's on a Catholic university campus, and it's a dry campus. There's no drinking, there's no smoking, and that's part of at least historically part of the pure hacker culture, which Hope purports to do.
Historically, I'd never been because it always felt overly political.
Yeah, I
me.
agree.
And-
That was one of the reasons.
and-
For me, it was at the dank hotel that everyone complained about.
Yep.
And it was highly political.
Mhm.
And it seemed
Very
like a lot of their
yeah.
topics were more privacy and politically motivated than technically motivated. But it
Yep.
sounds
Or
like they've evolved.
or
though.
hacktivism and
Hacktivism.
Well, I mean, let's qualify what we mean by political, because that's a very broad, sweeping statement. They are very left-leaning, EFF first. I mean, the sponsoring organization is 2600, Emmanuel Goldstein. So it's political in the sense that they're very, very extremely left-leaning.
Yeah.
They had a keynote speaker of Bradley Manning and the guy in Russia remotely.
Edward Snowden.
Those were the
remotely
keynote.
Did a talk. Yep.
Yeah, those were the keynote speakers. That was the year where I was sort of disgusted.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So it's political if you're not in their
sense
camp.
where they're about freedom to
they're just an
idealized
idealized conference. And so what's interesting,
I don't think it's a bad thing. I've always
right.
respected the Hope Conference, but I'm like, maybe not my scene. I like more.
But so your story, Paul, is that that immigration crackdown is going to impact ticket sales to Hope.
That's Sam's
Apparently.
story. But
Sam.
Yeah, apparently it's cutting in half. So I think in addition to being very political, it's also very international. A lot of people are from Europe.
European.
And those people are unsafe coming here now, which I think they're correct. That's why, that's why I think, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have to resize the venue because with half as many attendees, they're going to have less money. So,
wow.
So, but with the immigration is impacting Hope, but it's impacting our industry specifically as well.
Yeah.
But also people leaving the country who are here on a work visa have a tough time getting in. I can tell you a story after the show about that hits home for me. But also, but what we're saying in this story is folks from Europe, they want to come to the United States to attend a conference, are nervous, or is there a track record, or both?
Both. Most of people have been stopped for minor infractions at the border and jailed or vanished by ICE. So I think it's a real threat. Canadians,
which again makes it very political, but that's a very different kind of political than what we usually hear.
And I will back some of this up. I have a European colleague that is booking some flights, and because there are so few people booking flights from Europe to the U.S., the prices are way down.
Oh, really?
Interesting. Way down.
And from Canada, too. The Canadians don't want to come, and the Mexicans, a Mexican singer just had to cancel his concert because they won't let him in. I mean, we made it very clear we do not want any foreigners here now, and last night they stopped processing all student visa applications. There was an executive order yesterday from the president. So we don't want any foreigners here at all right now, and people are getting the message.
Well,
And what were they saying too? If you're here on a student visa, time to go home.
Wow.
whoa.
And they paused all processing so they can add inspecting your social media to determine if you really are worthy of being here or if you're going to make trouble.
Don't like it.
Well, I think it's also impacting us.
There's a lot of places we could go with that. Like, I think politically we tend to go to extremes.
Yeah.
In either direction, which is I don't like extremes in either direction because it's just bad, right? It's just not accomplishing the mission. The real answer is somewhere in between with smart legislation, smart laws that are preventing the bad things but allowing the good things. But so without that intelligent behavior, we go to extremes. No one can come in, or everyone can come in as an extreme, which is neither one of those. I think are great options, right? But also, we've had that similar. Speaking of Canada, we've had that similar experiences going to Canada.
Mhm.
I think all of us can tell stories about ourselves or
Yep.
our peers that have gone to Canada and have trouble. Like, I'm going to teach a class. Nope.
Nope.
Can't get in. Sorry.
Hey, I know
Really?
that guy. Yeah.
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 I think
okay,
Larry,
so
that
you were
was
saying
you.
you
That was
couldn't get
it.
into Canada because even though it was a
Yep.
legitimate. Okay.
Wow.
I was going there to teach a class for SANS 6 days.
You have gotten in before.
Yep, I had.
Regina, because you did Regina.
I've been to Canada a dozen times to go teach.
Because the first time I was like, I can't go to Canada and teach because of my schedule. I'm like, but Larry can. And they were like, yeah, let's send Larry to Regina, Saskatchewan
in February.
And Larry got sick. Did you get sick on the way there?
Yep, I got sick on the way there.
And it was negative 30 degrees.
It was stupid cold, and it snowed like 6 to
It
8
was a
inches
story
minimum
for
every
the
day.
ages.
Oh, and that was the Wi-Fi conference when we actually brought routers and stuff for students to hack.
So you had to go to Canada sick when it was minus 30 degrees with gear and go, hey, I'm here to
And even better, the students couldn't do the first 3 days worth of labs because the bank next door put in Wi-Fi IPS and was de-authing all of our routers.
Oh,
Not only was it, and
we
not
can't make this
No.
shit up.
and not only was it de-authing our routers, it was de-authing all of the other routers for all of the neighborhoods nearby, including the municipal provided Wi-Fi networks for the low-income housing, the low-income folks.
That was great. But then after that,
and even better, it was a teachable moment because we had RCMP in our class.
the
And
Rocky
we got them
Mountain-
to call the company and be like,
I don't think it's
Excuse
Rocky
me?
Mountain, Paul, but like, I don't, like
You remember that year that I flew overseas to Canada, Paul?
Yes.
That was to
How
go
could we
to
forget?
go to a conference called the Atlantic Security Conference. Adrian Crenshaw was supposed to do the video recording for that conference.
Yes.
He got stopped at the border and wasn't allowed in.
Yes.
Yep.
So they had no video that year.
"Yep, I have
Rocky Mountain. What is the
Royal Canadian Mounted Police."
Royal Canadian Mounted Police?
Yes.
Mounted.
I apologize. I wanted to make sure I got that right.
So Larry, they blocked you from going in the country? How did that happen?
Sometime after that is so,
So
we're not
that
talking
time
about
you
when
got
you
in-
went to
so it was
Regina.
because-
That time you could in.
sometime after that, yes, I went to go, and I didn't have a work visa, and I had never had a work visa before. Because it was such a short stay. It was under a week and that type of stuff. And you'll answer the forms honestly. What are you here for? Are you here for work? And I get to the immigrations and customs, and they say, "Oh, you're here for work? Yep, great. How long are you here for? I'm here for 8 days. Great, no problem. Why don't you head right over to here?" And it was the little back room where they put on the rubber gloves type of deal, and it was just to ask a bunch of questions.
I think it was Josh Wright that described it as a dark room with a light bulb,
A single light bulb
that hangs with a little pull chain and a metal folding chair.
Yeah, he got a pull chain. He was lucky. But no, they said, "Oh, you're here, and how long are you teaching for?" "Well, I teach for 6 days." "Well, if you're here and you're working longer than 5 days, you need a work visa." Well, this is news to me. So we got my SANS contacts on the phone with the immigration officer and blah, blah, blah. And I basically came down. I'm like, wait, look, here's what we can do. I have on my laptop, I have a 5-day training plan because we're delivering that for U.S. government folks. And here's the list of the titles and the companies that the people that are in this class work for. And like half of them were RCMP. Like, these are your coworkers, and we're training them to do this stuff. So they said, okay, 5 days. You're only allowed to teach for 5 days, and of course the class was booked for 6. So we found ways to get around some of that stuff. I had another friend get stopped at the border and was told he was not allowed in because they asked why he was there. He says, "Oh, I'm going to perform at a Canada Day celebration," and he says, "Well, where's your work visa?" He's like, "Well, I'm not working. It's volunteer. It's a friend's party, and I'm not getting paid for it." He said, "Well, you're still working because you're a performer." And the other question was, is there any Canadian that is qualified to do your job?
Oh,
Right.
interesting.
That's the question they asked.
And his answer was, I don't know of any Canadians stupid enough to do my job. He was a circus sideshow performer, and he would like
Swallow swords or something.
hammer nails into his head, and
Yeah.
and part of the reason why he got stopped at the border is because he had the bed of nails in the back of his car. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds to me like a bunch of Americans who didn't follow the law, right? Like,
Yep,
like,
you're right.
Like we
Yeah.
just.
Yeah, I was
we're
really
Americans.
hoping that it was
we can go
because-
anywhere we want.
I was hoping it was because of subversive, like social media findings or something, but no.
They just looked at him. Like, nope, that.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
another SANS instructor I know got pulled over into that, and just he ended up getting sent home because he just cracked a joke that they didn't find was funny. And it was like, you
He didn't tell the Canadian encryption joke.
No,
did he?
no. He said you Canadians take this whole separate country thing way too seriously.
Oh.
The wrong
So-
thing to say.
Oh.
So what you're saying
You're going
is
home. Yep,
there
you
was
went home.
there was a security engineering challenge in order to get in. I mean, a social engineering challenge.
Yes.
That's what you're
Yes,
saying.
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I've heard from people. Yeah.
It's
and
absolutely
I-
a social engineering challenge, and
and-
you
and I
essentially
had
have
not-
to lie.
Yeah, and I had not been back in many years, and I was actually going to speak at Sector last year, and I was worried that I was going to get turned to the border because it'd been
You're like, oh, this guy again.
this guy again. And I said, nope, no problem.
This guy was a 6-day training
Right.
class.
However, what they did was turn you around and let you go back to the USA, right? They didn't throw you in a dungeon incommunicado.
Right. Oh no, they actually let me into Canada because I could prove that I was only going to work for 5
Yeah.
days.
But like all their
That's
friends,
enough.
you're right, Sam. They basically tell you go back to
Go
the
home.
airport, next
Yep.
flight home, see you later. The
Yep.
scary part that I think you're getting at with the US is
Yeah,
you go to Guantanamo Bay or something for a vacation.
exactly.
Go to that room with the
vacation.
room with the folding chair and a light bulb for the next 3 months.
in the
I ended
car
up with my
battery.
first
Yeah.
apartment
This is-
in a full house of furniture because Canadians had filled out their paperwork too correctly.
Too correctly.
Literally, they had filled it out too correctly. And so they got pulled into full interrogation and everything because they said and this was the American side, obviously. They were Canadian, had already been an American, set up, moved their company to America, and were going back for their 10-month renewal as they were going through the process. But both the Canadian side and American side came back and they said, you did your paperwork correctly and that never happens. So who are you working for and what's going on? And they held them and
Whoa,
interrogated them. And
wow.
so then I was like house sitting for them. Long story short, I ended up getting the whole apartment and all of the furniture, all of the stuff that they had set up in this whole house because they never got to come back to America because they had done their paperwork correctly.
Wow. That makes me think I shouldn't fill out my DMV paperwork correctly. I had to do that a lot recently for my son's license.
Hey, speaking of that, did your son get a license?
My son got a license
Wow.
today.
Nice.
He passed.
Excellent.
He
Excellent.
passed. And speaking of rules, by the way, if you're going through the DMV test in Rhode Island and you're in a sedan, not a truck or an SUV, and it has tint on the back windows, you cannot do the ridiculous road test that they have. It's not a road test, it's a closed course. It's a closed course that you like basically have to drive forward, pull to the right, back up, go to the next station, parallel park, 3-point turn, go to the next station,
Back up for 50
back
feet.
up for about 50 feet, pull up to 2 stop signs, and you pass, which he did. He had to try twice. A second attempt, he parallel parked, which I've been driving since I was 16 years old. Sometimes, all of us will admit, I had to try a couple times to parallel park.
Yep.
He did it on the second try, was totally fine. I was super impressed. I'm like, dude,
But you hit a cone or a barrier, you're done.
You're done.
immediately.
But they wouldn't let us do it in his car because he had tint on the back windows. So my wife had to come with the SUV, which also has tint on the back windows, but it's an SUV, so it's fine. So, like, speaking of stupid rule, and my wife and my son are flipping out, and I'm like, this is a case where we just got to follow the rules because I'm pretty sure bribing a person who works for the state of Rhode Island is a felony.
Yep.
I mean, I have cash in my pocket, and I believe me, I want to give him $100, but I can't. So.
And even better, as you were saying before the show, your wife's SUV has all the sensors and the
All the-
cameras and all that,
Which
type
are
of stuff,
totally fine.
which you can use
Wow.
and totally fine, and that might have helped him pass his
It
test.
might help pass his test. Yeah.
So,
So you can use the
Even with
backup
the tin.
camera,
You
That's
can use
not
the backup
absolutely.
camera, the whole thing.
just not
Yep.
tin and
Dude,
wood.
that is like,
Can you use a self-parking car?
No, probably not.
You don't know.
Maybe you could have taken the Tesla and just
Right.
the Tesla would
And
have just done the whole
just
thing.
don't
by
even
itself.
tell them like, look how good I did. Like that was amazing.
Right? Aced it.
Yeah.
The
Can you
computer
use that
aced
car that the wheels turn sideways and it'll
Oh,
just
yeah.
pivot
just park,
in?
right?
Yeah.
Well, but you can do that if
Well,
you have
or
a
the-
clutch. I mean, technically, if you're really
or
good,
the-
you can do that even without the car doing it itself.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Or they have the old style army jeeps where you just get out and you disassemble it and then you reassemble it in the parking spot.
All kinds of.
There's a
that.
time limit.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
I did want to talk about how Signal says it will block Windows recall. And how is that possible? Is there like a kill bit for Windows recall?
No, unfortunately,
yes.
but there is for DRM. You can claim that this is copyrighted content like a movie, so don't take a picture of it. That's what they used.
Interesting.
And so I do I need to get something signed by Microsoft to say that it's DRM content, or is there like a process that I follow
Something on the API apparently.
in the API
Yeah.
that I say this is DRM? So I just need to talk to the kernel and say, hey, kernel, API call, by the way, this is DRM content. So don't include it in Microsoft in Windows recall.
And so is it just
Windows
blacked
recall.
out in recall? Like if you were to, to look at the image?
Is it yeah, it's a great point. Is it redacted or doesn't take a screenshot at all, I wonder? Or if the Signal screen is there, is it just
I'm thinking
black?
it's black.
Yeah, I don't know the details of that, but I do know Kevin Beaumont tested Microsoft Recall, and he said it doesn't live up to its promises. Like it says it won't capture credit card numbers, but sometimes
But it
it
does.
does, and so on. So it's and I
Now
wonder
you
how
got my
perfect this
attention.
defense is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
What
the
does
issue.
PCI say, Jeff? Does PCI say no Windows recall on any device that is included in PCI?
Come on, none of his customers are using Windows 11. They're not that far
Well,
advanced.
and see, this is the problem. The guy at the other
They're
end of
still
your
on
email
XP.
or
Come on
something
now.
might have Microsoft Recall. So even if you've turned
That's
it off, yeah,
Dude, that is my concern. So
Yeah.
obviously, I took the Linux oath that I have to disclose that I run Linux on the desktop. I use Arch, by the way. So as a Linux user, I'm like, I'm safe from Windows recall. But I'm like,
No.
wait, if someone I'm communicating with has Windows recall, whatever I'm typing in the chat window or whatever application is being saved as a screenshot somewhere on their system.
Well, I hope you're not putting your credit card numbers in some random chat window.
you might be putting it in
Usually
Signal
not.
though.
I mean, sometime. I mean,
But you might trust Signal. I mean, the cabinet officials all trust Signal. I mean, it's what I would use for sending
But Bill,
confidential
you know
data.
what's funny though, Bill, is you're a big fan of disappearing messages, and I agree with
Yep.
that. But in this case,
There is no
recall
such
is
thing.
taking a snapshot of your message and then storing it. And even though your
Well,
message
so what's
disappears,
funny enough about
it's-
that, Paul, I've got a real problem, and it's something, Sam, that you're talking about right now. Like there is a whole new like class of like Zoom plugins and all of this stuff that deep fake detectors and this, that, or whatever. And like I have a real problem with that because you may be running that, right? And I have no idea what's being like. So I may be having a private Zoom conversation and I know that, and I tell you, hey, you can't turn on the Zoom recording or whatever. But I have no idea what other things are screen scraping, recording, like, like
Right.
all of this stuff.
Well, that's what I told my kids about Snapchat. When Snapchat first came out, and I think we all said it on the show, even before our kids were old enough to use, like to have devices, is when Snapchat came out.
Yep.
And we were like, well, this thing's horrible. Even though it says you can't screenshot
Right.
it. I'm like, you know what happens? Kids do ridiculous things on Snapchat, and their friends are standing over their shoulder taking a picture of their phone. Because Snapchat
Right.
restricts you from taking screenshots. But I'm like,
It
anyone can take a picture at any time of your screen.
right. It didn't used to restrict you, but
It
it
would
tell- but
notify.
It would give you a
Yeah.
notice. Yeah, notify. Hey, the other
Yeah.
user just took a screenshot, and by then it's too late.
Too late. Who cares?
Cat's out of the bag, pun
Right.
intended.
But if Larry's got something on his phone that he doesn't want anyone to see on Snapchat, and I take a picture of it, now I have that. Now I have that picture. But this is like the same thing we're talking about.
What are you
now.
taking pictures of, Larry?
Well, we all. I mean,
Bill, I sent them all to you. What do you mean?
But I mean, the point is, what you described of them taking a picture is a planned conscious attack, which would only happen in rare cases. But Microsoft Recall is just going to be copying everything on
Everything
mass
happens. Right.
when people didn't intend it.
Right.
It's just automatic. So it's a
Well,
lot
you
more
remember
dangerous.
when we used to worry about like keystroke loggers and all this shit, and now all this stuff. Sorry, not allowed to say shit.
No, you can say. Who said you can't say shit?
Say shit.
But now, like
You say
now,
shit.
it's like a feature, right?
Only
Like,
so many times though. We got to keep our PG-13
Right.
rating. I don't know how many times you can
right,
say.
I have no
I have
clue.
to ask an LLM. How many times can I say shit
Right.
before I transfer from a PG-13 to an R
Well,
rating?
what I just think
On
is funny
YouTube.
is now we're just embedding like keystroke loggers and everything just into our OS, right? Remember there was like Tempest where we try and like steal the screens. Now we're just gonna just take a screenshot every second or whatever and like save it for whoever needs it later.
I don't need to read this shit through.
I don't think these modern flat screen monitors
who wants this?
broadcast
Who
quite
wants
as much as the old CRTs.
Who wants this? Who
Yeah,
wants an operating system that is constantly taking
Nobody.
screenshots of whatever's on the
Nobody.
screen?
There-
Nobody
Well,
wants this. No, I don't. No, nobody.
My
6 months ago-
right. Yeah, right.
This
Microsoft
is 6 months ago.
Fair.
This is what everybody bet on. Everybody thought that you would pay money for a butler that would know everything and like help run your life. And that's what Google wanted to make and Microsoft wanted to make and Apple wanted to make. And they all thought that this was going to be wonderful.
When
And
you
it
said
has a-
Butler,
yeah.
when you said Butler, Sam, I thought of
Yeah.
Ask Jeeves.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, the point is,
Oh, my
but I mean, the point was you're supposed to be able to trust your butler and they really do know everything about you and they
the
take care of
youngins
you.
are going to ChatGPT asking, what is
Ask
Jeeves? What is
Jeeves?
Ask
Yeah.
Jeeves? I have
Ask, not ass, Jeeves. Ask.
Ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
You know,
That's different.
That's why.
Jeeves.
That's why Microsoft pushed it. Everybody thought this was going to be the killer app
Yeah.
that would pay for AI.
Yeah.
So everybody pushed it out, and it has flopped for everybody. So
Well,
you have to wait for the next
it's
idea.
Not just that. It's like so. You've like your point is apt. I want to do some thinking about like, is there going to be a killer app that pays the bill for AI? I don't know. Like, I do think the AI is making me more efficient, but like it has definitely found its way into my workflow. But I don't.
Are you paying for it?
Is it
Yes.
making you more efficient or is it making you more lazy and stupider?
But yes,
No, more efficient.
and
more
lazy,
efficient.
But are you paying for
I
it?
am. Yeah, I do pay for it.
Okay, I'm not.
Then
I'm only
you're
using the free
stupider.
stuff.
Well, it's only $20 a month, right? And like, and what I see is that
Well, that one's only $20 a month, plus the other one that's $20
I
a
know.
month. No, wait,
And
how
the
much
other
is
one that is
how much
$20 a
is ChatGPT and Perplexity together?
How many screening apps are you paying for? And you don't
I
even
thought
know
that
it.
I thought that was $10 a month each.
They now have some that are like $250 a month. The latest advanced reasoning models.
The advanced reasoning from ChatGPT is more a lot more expensive. But I pay for Perplexity and ChatGPT, and I use both on a regular basis, and it makes me more productive. I don't know how it enables laziness. I mean, it's more productive. If again, going back to my example, if my boss asked me to create a social post and I've used
use
LLM
every tool available to you, right?
smartly,
Like, use
and I
every-
produce results. And my boss looked at it today and was like, I'm like, do you have any modifications to that? Like, I'm telling you right now, like I'm disclosing that was an LLM. I changed one word. What do you think? She's like, I don't know. I can tell it different. Which word was it? I think it was like to such as. It was just a grammar because I also use Grammarly, mostly because
Because you're
I remember back in the day.
I'm like a cyborg. I'm like a cyborg when I write, dude. Like I have LLMs and I have Grammarly, but why wouldn't I do that?
No, I agree.
Because my management is like,
I completely agree.
Are you using those tools? Does it like I want this shit now?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do it in a fraction of the time, and the results are the same for stuff, again, it's not. I'm not doing a research paper for a customer.
Yeah.
Using totally like we collaborate and we are announcing very soon a research paper for a customer, right? And yes, I use those tools, but there was a whole research behind all of that. But for like the quick webinar descriptions, social media posts, and even blog posts
that are really
not blog
hard.
posts entirely.
So
webinar
you're saying it's
descriptions are
okay for
hard.
sales and marketing.
Yeah.
So, for content, but like when you get to the blog post, I'm not at the point where it can write an entire blog.
No, not even close.
It can help me. It can help me with that. It does a whole bunch
I
of
think
research
that
for
whoever's description it was earlier that said it was a junior assistant. That's right. That's exactly how
absolutely.
I treat it too.
It's a junior assistant,
That was
right?
Sam.
Yeah. So
But like management is going to ask you not like, hey, are you using AI or not? And like when you're in school, like, oh, did you use AI to generate that? You fail. When you get into the workplace,
It's the
They're
opposite.
like, did you use AI?
Yeah.
And if you say no, they're like,
You
why
fail.
not?
You
Why
fail.
not?
Yeah.
Because if it could help you save 20% of your time, even, I want you using the AI thing. And as long as you're disclosing it, I do. I disclose, like, my founders will ask me, hey, Paul, I have a board presentation coming up, or investors presentation coming up. I need you to summarize the last 3 months of research that we did in the threat landscape. And I will literally AI
For
generate
sure.
slides for them. And then I will create a slide manually, right? Like the old fashioned way. And then I will tell them slides 1 through 4 are AI generated. The resources that were derived from that are in slide 5. Slide 6 is my take on that, right? And slides 1 through 5, I can generate like in 4 minutes.
What are you using to
The other
generate
slide
slides?
takes me a little
Because
more.
I tried AI slides.
Gamma AI.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
Gamma.app.
Okay.
If you go to Gamma.app.
Well,
So my work.
And how much does that one cost?
Now this is my this is free. So I don't pay for Gamma AI, but it's a
Okay.
great tool. And my friend told me about it. But so what I'll do is I'll have Perplexity describe something for me. Then I'll take that text and I'll go to Gamma.ai and I'm like, based on this text, generate me some
hell
slides.
yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. And it's one point. And then I'll research and do all that stuff. And I'll create a slide on my own. And I'm like, here's your summary for the board. And they use some or all of it, like whatever they use is, but they haven't complained and been like, Paul, that sucks, right? They're like, Paul, whatever you created is great and it satisfies the requirement. And if I can do it in a fraction of the time, that's important.
Yep.
Right. I didn't spend days creating.
So do you
case in point, my marketing department came to me last week and said, "Hey, Larry, there's a CFP we'd love you to submit for. Can you think of some ideas?" And I'm like, "Great, yeah, I'll try to think of something. Give me a couple of days." And I got buried in work and completely forgot about it. And they came to me yesterday and said, "Hey, Larry, we fed this to a GPT that we have with your style and some of your experience. And we came up with these 4 topics and these brief outlines for some.
Which one you want to do?
I'd like you to submit."
Yeah.
And they said, "Do you like any of these?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, number 2 is freaking awesome." And I just read 2 news stories about that exact
That's
thing.
awesome.
Like that's the one. So
Sam, back to your, I think AI is increasing productivity.
Yeah.
But it's more of, it's augmented reality. It's not completely automated reality. It's a tool. It's a tool that's helping us be more productive, not replacing us.
Yeah, but the point is, it works by RAG, retrieval augmented generation. It has to have data about you. So Microsoft said we have to collect all your data to make it more productive for you, and Apple would have to do the same.
And OCR, all that shit.
Yeah.
Yep.
So speaking of Larry's story,
in principle, they're right.
I want to talk about a security story real quick.
Let's do it.
So two of Larry's stories really stuck out to me. So Have I Been Pwned 2.0? And then that Van Helsing ransomware. So not sure where you guys want to go, but I like both of those.
Oh, let's do it.
I was looking at Have I Been Pwned, typing in all my email addresses.
Yeah. So, so if you're not aware, and I assume anybody watching this show is probably aware of Have I Been Pwned website. This is a website where you can go in and you can type in your email or somebody else's email and see what breaches, or password dumps or whatever they've been a part.
We should do a live demo.
We should.
Paul.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, who wants to give me their email address?
Mine is heavenSent@gmail.com. Like, please.
SC or SE?
HEV.
No, it's not spelled correctly.
HEVNSNT@gmail.com. And that is an old email that I used to use a long time ago, right? So if anybody's wanting to email me, that is not the one that I'm currently.
You're in 16
Look
data
at that.
breaches.
Look at that, right?
Dude, you ordered stuff from Advanced Auto Parts, huh?
I think everybody has, right?
Neiman Marcus.
And so what's really nice about this website is, you can go in and you can see like what breaches you've been in. And then if you're trying to target someone, you can go after that dump, go get their information.
Oh, hey, look, it's Pornhub.
Yeah, right. Like the Ashley Madison.
Ashley
digital
Madison.
banking app, Dave.
Ashley Madison.
Yeah. But so they just updated their site to 2.0. And one of the things that I really like, Paul, you were just showing, was a timeline. So in the past, it was kind of hard to it's just kind of hard to parse. Like, okay, what was the most recent one? What, like where am I going to go for the most recent data? And I really like the way that they lay out that timeline with what you were just scrolling through. But I think it's a great tool.
Yeah, I mean, what I was wondering, because I did something similar with what I consider my throwaway email address, and a bunch of hits popped up, but I'm looking through the timeline, and like some of these breaches that they're reporting were 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 years ago. And I'm like, I've changed my password since then.
Yep.
So is this an issue? Or I put in my corporate email address, and it even popped a couple times. But again, several years ago, and my company still forces us to change our passwords every 90 days. In fact, I have to do it in the next 2 days.
What's your new password going to be?
Slightly different from the last
There
one.
you go.
Wait.
I plugged in one of my email
Yeah.
addresses, and I scrolled all the way back to 2008, and it came back with MySpace.
Yeah, one of
Oh,
mine.
Hey,
one of mine popped up with MySpace.
I'll put in
Yep.
one of my old ones.
I love how we're just giving out emails. Here we go.
Yes, dear. Hang on.
Okay.
What is your old email address,
It's
Mandy?
melvablue, MELVABLUE @gmail.com. Or you could go to the first one, the Hotmail, but that's really old.
And what do we want to do? Scroll all the way back, and let's see.
Mhm.
White pages.
We want to see it on the screen.
White pages. River City Media. MyFitnessPal.
Ah.
Poshmark.
So, for those of you,
Poshmark's a great. That's a great.
so I don't know if
site.
you
It
can
is.
see
My
it,
wife
Paul,
bought us stuff on
I
Poshmark.
can't really see your screen, but so if you're targeting someone, what you want to do is you want to look through there, and it shows you what types of data was included in the breach data, right? So was it name? Was
Yeah.
it address? Was
Right,
it
right.
like
Email address,
phone
passwords,
number,
phone numbers,
password,
usernames.
those
But
sort of
I
things?
think it does not necessarily mean that all of your data
That
for
is correct. So
category
Jeff,
was
you are
compromised.
absolutely are correct. So when it says, like, if we use that Poshmark one, whatever it is, it will say the types of data that was included in that breach, not necessarily that your
Usernames
data
and passwords.
was in there.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I put in Jeff at securityweekly.net, Jeff at securityweekly.com, Jeff at rihackers.com, which is a defunct email alias that we used to have.
well,
And they all
Well,
popped.
for some of us.
Yeah.
For some of us, it still works.
it's worthwhile
Well, not for
checking
us.
your accounts, and it's worthwhile checking your
Yes.
friends' accounts. So if they are on the Ashley Madison breach, you can like make fun of them or whatever.
Yeah.
And Jeff, like you're saying, well, some of this stuff is 6 years old, and like, it's how valid is it? But I'm looking at some of this stuff for one of my old throwaway email addresses, and apparently in 2020, I signed up for a site called Mathway. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I
It's a
saw
math
some of that
solving
too.
website. Like,
Well, so this is the problem for us folks who've been on the internet for a really long time. I don't want to say
Forever.
older people, but
Me,
we've been on the internet for a really long time. We've had a lot of email addresses.
That's right.
We've
Right.
signed up for a lot of stuff.
I think I have signed
Yeah.
up for every website.
it's like
Say,
every
all-
website across all
And-
your email addresses, right? It's like,
But wait,
really,
I have a
it-
question
dude, it's-
completely not related, because that email address that I just told you, there is literally a street in Las Vegas named after that email address. So do any of your old email addresses have a street in Vegas?
No,
nope.
Not that I know. Right?
Or did you name your email
No, literally,
address
like
after a
they had
street
to
in
get my
Vegas?
clearance in order to name the street that. It's not a very
Oh,
big
that's
street.
super cool.
Yeah, it's not a very big one, but it is.
All right,
There is a
next
street.
time we're in Vegas, we're stealing the sign. For
Oh, that would be
sure.
awesome. You know what I
totally.
wanted to do?
I like-
Wait, does it say it's the street like at
No,
gmail.com,
it just says
or
it's
does it
just
say-
Melva Blue. It's just Melva Blue Court. But
That's
like,
hilarious,
I think
yeah.
you know what we should do is do like a parade on it. You know, like
Well, I think we should take markers and put at gmail.com.
Yeah.
Right?
Like all your
I
old
think there's
passwords
googly eyes on that
signs
sign.
and march down the street. Yeah,
yes.
I was breached.
Paul, are you coming to Vegas this summer? You are now.
I'll go to everybody. We can
oh,
just talk to
dude, I
people there.
volunteer.
Yeah.
So, Larry, your
So-
story number 4, this Van Helsing.
Hold on,
Okay.
hold on. I've got one that's completely weird on the have I been pwned one. I put in an email address that I use fairly frequently, and it says that apparently that email address was found in a breach from Epic EPIK, which is It is a domain registrar that is
I remember.
famous for hosting alt-right websites.
Well, so just to be clear, I am aware of that breach, and I am aware of that registrar.
Also,
they
scraped whois records.
Hold on. Let Bill talk.
Well, I was going to say they are now famous for hosting and protecting alt-rights. They didn't necessarily used to be.
Right. And the breach is scraped whois records belonging to individuals and organizations who were not Epic customers.
And, some people sell email lists and companies acquire other companies. So your email can end up in places where you didn't really sign up for.
Yeah.
Dude, the privacy thing is ridiculous.
Has anybody
And
set up a
people do
website?
sign up other people as a prank,
Yep.
Has anybody set up a website that's similar to Have I Been Pwned, where you type in your password to see if it shows up in a list, and then you just
Sorry,
find
There's
it?
a few of them.
But you know what's funny, Jeff? I did see a site that said, "Hey, give me your private key, and I'll tell you where all the instances are that where your private key is used," or something like that. And I'm like, whoa. I'm pretty sure that whole site is a scam, which is why I didn't put
So
links
there
to it or
is a
whatever,
password check on Have I Been Pwned? I mean, so
I thought there was. At least
and
in
what they
1.0
do is
there
they
was.
say that they
They
hash
hash
it and then check it across those, and a lot of times that data has been so.
Does Troy keep it? But Troy doesn't keep a log. Like if I use
No,
email
it
addresses in there,
specifically
he is
states that that's not there.
safe,
No, but he's
he doesn't-
running it on a Windows device.
Right.
Yeah, but Troy is super smart.
Wait, is Troy-
he's a
Is
ninja.
Troy doing
Yeah.
2.0? I'm sorry, Bill. I didn't hear that if you said it or not.
Oh yeah, but it's a great
Because
point,
I thought
Mandy,
he was
because he
selling.
talked about selling
right.
it. Yeah, he wanted to sell it a while back, but I think he took it back.
Okay. Well, I was
Actually,
thinking
I don't.
he took
That's
it
a
back.
good point. I don't know.
No,
Like,
because he
I-
wanted to sell it, or I thought he
2.0,
did.
I think is
okay,
him.
he took it back.
No, this is him.
Okay.
No, this is Troy.
You just as a general measure, this is a serious problem because even if you trust Troy, after a while the company gets sold to somebody that might do something bad with the data.
Yeah, but
Well,
quite
which is why
honestly,
I
this
think
is
we're thankful that Troy.
yeah. This
Troy
data is
Yeah.
public
Yeah.
anyway, right? This stuff is like
Yeah, no,
you know,
it's right.
he's-
It's just a conduit.
He's
Yep.
indexing public data, right? And so, and what I was going to say about that password data is a lot of times that has been integrated into your password managers, right? So if you type in a password, it'll say, "Hey, this is a known compromised password." That's where that data is coming from.
Wait, so how is that done differently? Like in Password Manager, whenever it'll tell me when they say,
It sends an API call
That's right.
to Have I Been Pwned, I think. That's how it works.
I think so.
you
too.
think so? Okay.
Yeah.
I'd never thought about
Yeah.
that part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's cashing those checks.
Okay.
Good for him.
Yeah.
So let's
All
do a
right,
demo of
dude,
some of
when I
our
read your
favorite
story
passwords.
Number one, where it says Montana becomes the first state to close law enforcement data broker loophole.
Yep.
I read that as Hannah Montana. I don't know why I read that as I think Hannah Montana Linux. Was that a real thing? I think it was a real Linux.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
distro.
surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
But yeah, it
surprised.
was real.
It was real.
Yeah, but Bill, you want to talk about Van Helsing?
Well, so I'd like to talk about the story, but quite honestly, there was there's a part of that story that just kind of blew me away, and that was the website included inside of there that was linked to that called ransomware.live. But I want you to tell the story, but then I want to talk about that website real quick.
Yeah. So, So I thought this one was kind of funny. It was very much a YOLO type of moment. One of the former developers of the Van Helsing RAS ransomware as a service, stole their source code effectively and offered it for sale. One of the former developers stole the stuff, offered it for sale, and the folks that were still left working on it were just like, well, hell with it. Here it is. Here all of it is for free. You're going to steal our stuff and try to sell it? Nope, we're just going to release it publicly. So here's the code.
I thought
that was
I think
hilarious.
it's hilarious too, and it's something about honor among thieves and all this, all of these things. So when I was reading the story that, Larry, when I was reading your story, I came across ransom.live in that link, and I had never seen that before.
Ransomware.live.
And I've never seen this site before. I use some other ransomware tracking tools, and this is a really big part.
This is like your world.
Yeah, this is
Bill.
a really big part of my world and part of my daily life. And there's something on this page that just absolutely blew me away. Up at the top.
But I just want to go back how Bill said it's part of my daily life. not my job. Which is a testament to like how passionate
that's
we
true.
are
Yeah.
about what we do.
Yeah.
or how
have you seen the guy that-
disturbed and
Right. Yeah.
you know, don't
Or more
don't have
importantly, have you
proper life
seen the guy
balance.
that authors Van Helsing and Bill in the
Right.
same
That's
room at the
true.
same
That's a
time?
good point. That's a good point. But it's
Yeah,
the
I've never seen the
negotiations.
ransomware.live guy and Bill in the same
Click
room.
on negotiations up top left. This is fantastic. So as somebody who is engaging in ransomware negotiations a couple times a month myself, like that, you know, that I'm doing that.
So I didn't know that you did that. I know there's people in our field,
Yeah.
Bill, like in those people are not me,
Yeah.
but there are people that.
So
will
this
do
is something
the
that I really
negotiations.
pride myself on. This is something that
Yeah. So you will actually talk
absolutely.
to ransomware operators
want to-
and negotiate.
I
the
want
ransom.
to be that person because I have very clear strategies on what I'm after. This was the
I can-
first
you know what,
time
Bill?
I've ever
knowing
seen
you as long as
Yeah.
knowing you as long as I have. That's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
It's a great fit.
Yeah.
I can see you talking to ransomware people and go like,
Well, this is the first time I've seen other strategies. Like, so going through and kind of looking at, and this is quite honestly, this is a really good treasure trove.
wait, so this person 9 messages and they didn't. So the first one here,
Yeah.
right? Like 9 messages, $1 million ransom, negotiated ransom, not available.
Well, and look how it broke
So
down.
that means they found the
Well,
key. That means they found the
Look
key
how it broke
at some
down
point.
right away, right? Like, you know, so
Yep.
that conversation.
Well, the site's kind of slow. I'm waiting
Yeah,
for it to
me
load,
too, I
but-
think.
Yeah. So
that site can handle 4 of us on it right now at the same time.
Yeah, apparently. So yeah.
looking down some more, I'm down at Black Matter. 77 messages. Initial ransom was $15 million, and the negotiated was down to $13.5 million. But it was not indicated that it was actually paid.
I think Akira ransomware support chat. We've all heard of Akira, right? The ransomware,
Yeah.
Yep.
not the.
Not the
Is
co-host.
that an anime character?
Akira, not the
anime.
ASW.
Yeah, I
host,
said not the
former
ASW host, not the.
No, but Akira's the Japanese anime character. Akira, I feel like. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just think that if
Anyway,
some
dude, this is
this
cool.
is super cool. That's something I've never seen before on any other ransomware site or ransomware tracking site.
Hey.
If this is something that you're living in your world, what's really, really cool about these chats and why I like to chat about that is you start to learn who you're dealing with. Are you dealing with like a client support person? Are you dealing with somebody that actually knows? You know, I have very clear strategies about the type of information that I want to extract from them, and you know, and those kind of things. And so, reading how other people are handling those is really going to improve, I think, my negotiations.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
and if you click the client ID, you see the actual chat exchanges.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's so cool. Like,
Yeah, awesome.
yeah, super cool. I'm so glad you included that.
Great
Larry.
find,
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. Just reading through one of the.
Did
chats
you use
here.
AI to find this by chance, Larry?
No, I was just reading through news stories, and I
Oh,
thought it was
look at
kinda neat.
that. Okay.
Yep. So here's another one.
Well, so I use Feely. Feely uses AI to find stories, Jeff.
Yep.
So.
Revil was
Are evil?
Yeah.
Are evil. There's one here. A number of messages, 132. Initial ransom, $1 million. They, as part of the ransomware chat, they said, "Oh, yeah, no, we're a nonprofit funded by state and donations and stuff." They negotiated it down to $300,000,
Yeah.
and there was proof that it was paid.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's the paid column with the Bitcoin Cash logo.
Dude, there's a lot more money in ransomware going on than I ever thought.
Oh yeah.
Holy crap.
That's why there's so much,
Mhm.
and everybody is starting
Because
to say,
people
"Don't
pay."
pay."
Mhm.
Until
Right,
we quit
but people
paying,
pay.
this is going to keep
But I
happening.
thought it was like last year, wasn't it? That the ransomware, I don't remember the percentages. It was a huge percentage of why the proceeds from cybercrime, if put together, were the 3rd largest GDP. Like if it was one country, it was the 3rd largest GDP in the world.
I believe it.
And
But Sam, sometimes you have to. Like, so I take it very, very I take it very personally if we get to a point where we have to pay anything. I mean, like anything. If we $1,000, I lose. I want to go punch a hole in the wall, right? Because I don't like paying criminals. But there are times You have to.
I know
when you
another.
have to pay. Yeah.
I know other people working in your space, and they say you always pay. Everybody pays. I mean, the argument is just undeniable. It'd be cheaper to pay than to recover.
Well, sometimes.
Well, that's what they're banking on. That's what they're banking on.
A lot of times,
if I'm a threat actor, that's what I'm.
A lot of times.
on,
So let me
right?
give you an example that has nothing to do with money. Is it cheaper to pay or what? Like, what if so they're a plastic surgeon gets hit, and the choice is, hey, we're going to publish all the before and after photos, or you pay. Right, like so, like that's not a like.
Yep.
What are you saying? Like the before and after photos
of the patients.
The patient.
So it'll destroy your business, right? It'll destroy the
'cause you're leaking
confidentiality.
it's PII. It's confidentiality.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and also people wanted to change their image, like I've seen pictures of Elon Musk before all his plastic surgery, and he really doesn't like those pictures going around. It's
well, I mean, so like nude photos of your patients. Right. Yeah. Like, and so like, how are you? So you make a call now, like, is it, is this it's not a matter, it's an ethical issue and not a cost issue. Right.
But it's also just a business ending incident.
For sure.
This is what I was doing consulting for a company. I said, figure out what would really hurt you. And let's talk about that.
Yeah.
There is something about your data that you really, really can't afford to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
But interesting though, how much of a call to action it is for certain industries like plastic surgery to be like, holy shit, we need to be on our game.
Show me on the data where the bad malware touched them.
Yeah. We need to be on our game. Right. You don't need like the cream of the crop security. You just need to be resilient to ransomware, which I feel like are two different things.
Malware and ransomware?
No, like ransomware versus like really good, like in a scale of security maturity and your defensive posture, resiliency to ransomware and higher level security. Like there's a gap
versus conventional breaches and attacks.
Yeah,
well, I think ransomware is the number one risk and the hardest to stop too. I don't know. I think that's pretty high.
Hardest to defend. Yeah. Like, are they the same thing? Like, in other words, like a financial organization that's protecting billions of dollars versus a plastic surgeon who's arguably hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe.
Both cases need to work on their fundamentals.
Both are like same level of security. In other words. Yeah.
It reminds me of the analogy I used to use back in the early days of the internet when I was trying to convince companies, now you need to start thinking about security. The analogy I used was, if you're driving around on, of course, this was 25, 30 years ago. What's a fancy, expensive car these days? A Tesla.
Not really.
Well, pick something. Ducati.
Yeah.
McLaren.
Let's go.
Are they still making the Club? $50, $75, $100 for the thing that locks the steering wheel column. Yeah. Are you going to use that as your only defense against theft against your $100,000 car?
Sure.
Nope.
Or let's say you're the college student that's I used to say delivering pizzas. Now we could just say you're the gig economy. You're the Uber driver. You're doing DoorDash or Instacart, and you're bopping along in a
so you're the
car
former
that you bought
heart
for
surgeon
$1,200
bucks, just doing delivery. Yeah,
you're in the Honda doing Uber or
right.
Uber
and do you spend the same $100 to protect your car from being stolen? Those are it's the same defense, and you're at some level protecting against your car being stolen, but there's other factors that have to be taken into consideration.
Well, quite honestly, the gig economy person needs to spend more money to protect their car because it's more impactful if it were to be stolen.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the point I'm making.
Yes, right.
That, you can't afford to just spend the cheap and dirty minimal type of thing, because if you lose your car, you lose your way of means of
If you're a plastic
living.
surgeon, you can afford to lose your McLaren, but you can't afford to lose your patient data. So it's all about what you protect.
Well, you can, because do you have the right insurance policy and what kind of limits are on it? I mean, it's all a financial equation, which is really what we're talking about at the end of the day when we're talking about risk. It's all about
I want to
money.
talk about Sam's story number one.
Before we move on, and
Yeah.
I know we only got a minute here, but I want one final thought on this one real quick. Ransomware is not an arms race; it's a legs race.
Oh God, that's so
Ransomware?
terrible.
Does your ransomware?
Oh my God.
Thought that one up myself, Bill. That's why it's terrible.
Drones don't
Didn't
need,
even ask AI for that one.
drones don't need legs. Drones from Russia are using AI in Telegram. I thought
Yeah.
this was fascinating.
Yeah, they've been using AI for a while. But what I thought was very interesting is the way the Ukrainians found out about it is they found a note inside one of the drones written by one of the Russian engineers giving them tips. So there are
that,
people.
but that is
Wow.
so like amazingly telling about what's happened. Like that is
Man.
like
Well, sure.
holy
I think
crap.
That puts
I mean-
the fries in the bag.
Sure. I mean, what's
It
happening
does.
in Russia, kind of like what's happening in America, is that the popular television stations are all propaganda, and people who believe that are pro the war. And there's a small group of people who actually find real information who are against the war and sort of subversively trying to undermine it. But anyway, the point is it does artificial intelligence, so you can't jam it. And it sends telemetry back through Telegram. So the operator is watching like what it's doing and controlling it to some extent through Telegram. And it connects to local Wi-Fi and local cell phone networks in Ukraine to send the data back.
Sam, one I learned about the other day that blew my mind, that there are now drones out there that are using fiber optic cable.
And so there's a wire whacked to some fixed operator, like miles of it.
Hundreds of potential miles of it, that the drones are using fiber optic cable because they cannot be RF jammed.
Wow.
It seems to me like AI is a far better solution. I mean, because that fiber is going to break or something. I mean, I would think.
But then if it does, it does, right? I had a friend send me a picture, I think, or it was a Reddit thread of basically all these overhead cables. They were like, I'm like, what the hell is that? And he's like, it's fiber from a drone.
What?
I'm like,
Well, this is
wait, what?
This is one of the benefits of war is you have a lot of creative technology developed for the weapons. So people are trying all sorts of different things, and there will be peripheral benefits from this later, just like the moonshot. You develop all this interesting technology to accomplish this thing.
Hey, because of that moonshot, we got Tang.
That's right.
And diapers. The better diapers were developed. Pampers.
What?
Yeah, from
They
NASA.
developed Pampers for the astronauts to wear inside the spacesuit.
Yes.
A whole bunch of stuff of improvements in our life came from the space program.
Yep. And then later astronauts wore Pampers so that they could go and beat somebody up on a 14-hour drive
That
from
was
Florida.
one.
Bring it full circle.
Dude, my mind is blown right now by that statement.
You don't remember that story? There was some astronaut that wanted to go beat up like their
Yes.
Their
husband.
ex's girlfriend.
There was
or
a
something.
woman
Yeah.
astronaut.
Yeah.
Her husband was cheating on her, and she drove like 14 hours to beat up the girl that her husband was cheating on her with, or something like that. Yeah.
And she wore a diaper to make the drive without
No
having
stops.
to stop.
Yeah.
Without stopping.
She had like
Yep.
Well, once
drinks
you find out
and
how
the
great it
diaper.
is,
Wow.
and
How
also
did we get here? Sometimes I get on the show and I'm like, how did we get here?
Tang. It was all Tang.
I think it was
here.
because
We went from Tang to diapers to Russian drone. Like,
yeah.
Well,
my mind is blown right
yeah.
now.
Inventions as a product of war.
I blame
If we've
Larry's
blown
leg
Paul's
joke.
mind, we should probably
We
call
should
it a day.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you all for participating in the show. Thank you all for listening to Paul's Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and out.
Pampers.
Right.